Hello and welcome to Fantastic Fights, the podcast about a middle-aged man playing adventure game books out loud on the internet. That middle-aged man is me, Hieronymus J. Doom, and this is another bonus episode of the podcast made possible by my patrons over on patreon.com/HJDoom. I have two new patrons to thank this episode. Chris and Daniel, thank you so much for your support. You keep the bonus episodes coming and also keep my second podcast, Popular Antiquarian, on the air. All patrons get access to a bunch of gaming material, and I'm currently working on a brand new science fiction game book as a thank you for all the support I've received. With science fiction being on my mind, this seemed like a good time to look at another science fiction inspired game book. I've written on Patreon about the challenges of producing sci-fi game books, so it seemed sensible to turn to a safe pair of hands in the form of Mark Smith and Jamie Thomson and their Falcon series of game books about special agents travelling in time and space. We covered the first volume in this series many moons ago, so this time out we're turning to Book 2 of Falcon, Mechanon. This was released in 1986 by Sphere Books with art by Geoff Sr. and Nick Weeks. Mark Smith and Jamie Thomson should need no introduction since we've covered them at length when we played every book in their legendary Way of the Tiger series, the ninja-themed game books. We've also covered their contributions to the Fighting Fantasy series. The Falcon books are set 1,000 years in the future when humanity has given up on war and conquered the realms of space and time instead. We take on the role of a special agent of the Time Agency, tasked with monitoring the timelines and taking action against threats to Earth in either the present or the past. The first book in the series involved a rogue time agent trying to mess with the development of human civilization by helping the Mongol hordes conquer Europe, illustrating the dangers of time travel technology and the need to police the past as carefully as the present. Time travel is mediated through a series of wormhole-like portals spread throughout the galaxy, which lead to specific times in the past. If you want to go back to 1500 BCE, for example, you have to take your time machine to the planet Ascension. Fortunately, faster-than-light space travel makes this fairly easy, but it's an intriguing way to link space and time because it creates plenty of opportunities for things to go wrong, which is ideal in a gaming setting. Realistically, time travel tends to be insanely broken, so unless you are an unfathomably good writer, you need to place some very clear constraints on how it actually works. The classic example is Doctor Who, where the Doctor was often presented as only vaguely in control of the TARDIS, meaning that once the characters arrived in a situation, they could not use further time travel as a solution to the problems they encountered. Let's take a look at the rules. There's quite a lot going on here, but the core system is pleasantly straightforward. Your character has two physical stats, attack modifier and evasion modifier, which both start at 0, but can change over the course of your adventures. You add your modifier to the result of 2d6 whenever the text asks you to make a relevant roll, and the text will also indicate the target number you need to hit to be successful. The same system is used for your two psychic abilities, which are Think Strike and the Power of the Will, which are a form of psychic attack and the ability to influence the minds of those with a weaker will. You also get 20 endurance, and that's your stamina or hit points. Lose all of them and it's game over. As well as this simple set of rules, there's a bunch of equipment you get access to as a special time agent. This is really lovingly set out in the book. Not only do you get descriptions of all your fancy gear, but there's technical illustrations of the items as well, which is a really nice touch. It does a great job of selling the fantasy that you're this elite time agent with all the power and responsibility that entails. This is a fantasy that's sure to come crashing down within moments as I gaily skip towards whatever opportunity for suicide the text affords me, but it's nice to have the fantasy for a moment at least. I'm not going to go over the entire kit. Suffice to say, you've got a time machine that looks like a golf ball sat on a very fancy golf tee, a blaster, a hat that makes you psychic good, a healing device, a replicator of sorts, a fancy spacesuit, and a thing for making your time machine look less out of place. In this adventure, we're told that we may also get access to a strike fighter and a Starship Trooper battlesuit. These very fancy bits of military kit have 10 defense points each, and the strike fighter begins with 4 fission warheads of enormous power, which does sound exciting. I do like having enormous power. There's also a scoring system where you collect letters as you play. I always enjoy a scoring system, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this one works. I think that's more or less everything we need to know at the outset. Anything else that comes up I'll deal with as and when. My agent may have the codename Falcon, but only I know their real and even more heroic name is Bork Bork Tremblesnout. Let's play Falcon 2 Mechanon. Mission Brief. As you walk into the recreation centre under its glass steel dome at the top of the Time building, you hear the deep booming voice of Special Agent Bloodhound. You nod to some operatives from the monitoring section and, passing through the empty dream booths, head towards the voice. Unusually, all except one of the SAT team, the Special Agents of Time, are off duty together. A celebration day has been given in honour of the success of your mission against the Renegade Lord. The agents are involved in a historical simulation of diplomatic intrigue. Occasionally, one or other of them types on the micro-terminal you all carry in place of a watch, and they examine a hovering globe screen to see the results of each move. Bloodhound looks up and says, "Here's Glory Hunter online, Falcon. Won any more medals since yesterday?" Lynx smiles sardonically. "Don't let the fact that the Falcon won the Golden Wings straight out of the Academy ruffle your calm, blood." "No, well, at least I wasn't Yelov's golden girl," he replies. Adjidi Yelov trained Lynx himself, and she is more deadly at unarmed combat than any of you. But she laughs at Bloodhound's jibe. Agent Sparrowhawk says quietly, "No one has proven that Adjidi was a traitor yet. Like Yelov, she is Assyrian and an electronics genius. Her feline features quiver momentarily as she turns on her heel and glides cat-like towards a dream booth. "It's bad for morale losing a boss like this," says Lynx. Sparrowhawk looks back and says, "Don't you think it's worse for Adjidi? They had to rebuild half of him. He's more of a droid than a man." The other agent at the table, Leopard, who himself is no more than a living brain in a robot body, butts in. "The advantage is all his, Sparrow." But she is gone, locked in a dream booth. And there's a picture of the various people sat around. Yeah, it's good. Really good, actually. Quite interestingly composed. There's a big, stern-looking face in a globe that I assume is Bloodhound, and a man and a woman sat next to a smaller globe, which I assume is Lynx. Maybe the one in the middle is not Bloodhound. Maybe that's the leader of Time. Maybe it's Bloodhound and Lynx staring at me. But yeah, it's a really nice bit of work. Classic 1980s illustration, I would say, and none the worse for it. You are about to greet your fellow agents at last when the globe screen flashes and your new section leader, Jabanque, seems to become flesh and blood before you. "Online, Sat Squad Falcon. I need to see you straight away. The rest I'll see straight afterwards. Where is Sparrowhawk?" You leave Lynx to explain as you run towards the pedway which will take you to your new leader. The door to Jabanque's office slides open at your touch. The building's service computer recognises your handprint. Jabanque is standing before the holoprojector. He smiles and says, "Well, I would apologise for asking you here on a Federation holiday, but in a way it's your fault. I need you. I have a mission, maybe every bit as perilous as your last." You nod, and then stare as a hologram of Yelov fills the room. The left side of his face is hidden by a silver mask, and his left arm is that of a robot. Jabanque says gravely, "When your blaster seared him, he was damaged so badly that the medtechs had to use bionic parts to replace those you had destroyed. He is now half man, half robot. Now this thing, he is quite mad, has escaped from the vault. Obviously there can be no question that Yelov's claim that he was controlled by the Hivers is a lie. I feel as though if this guy's a prisoner, it sort of sounds like they've attached a bunch of killbot parts to him, which may have been an error in retrospect. Jabanque's dark, unmoving face stares at you. Until recently he had been Yelov's colleague. Now you could almost believe he hated him. There was a fault in his psionic damper which we grafted into his circuitry. He still has his formidable powers of the mind, and he has used them to steal his old time machine. He has sworn vengeance on all Earthers, and on you, Falcon, in particular. There's no telling what damage he will do in his lust for absolute power, for it is as great as ever. Agent Chameleon, returning from a routine patrol with a readout from the time hole monitoring beacons on the current time holes, has reported a disturbance in the timeline of Mechanon, an enormous factory planet run entirely by droids, programmed only to mine metal, build copies of themselves, and construct the most deadly arsenal of interstellar weaponry in the universe. Until, that is, a terrible nuclear catastrophe reduced the planet to a tangled ruin of rock and metal. If Yelov is responsible, and if he should find a way of reversing this accident, the entire galaxy should be held to ransom. You are our best agent, Falcon. You must stop him before it is too late. I'll leave off the fact that time travel means that it's already too late. If someone's gone back in time and done something, it has happened. It's always too late if someone's gone back in time. In much the same way that if the train you are going to catch has already left the station, there's no point in driving at top speed to the train station. You will still have missed it, no matter how fast you drive. You leave Jabanque's office at a run, bound for your time machine. Falcon's wing at the Eiger Vault. The other agents step aside to let you pass. Sparrowhawk is not with them. So we've got a nice, straightforward setup. The guy we had a go at last time has got up to some new and exciting forms of skullduggery, and there's this little hint that maybe he's got a friend on the inside in the form of Sparrowhawk. Section 1, score a Q. Thank you. I don't mind if I do. The Hovrail car which will take you to the Eiger Vault glides soundlessly to a halt. As you secure the bubble hatch and type in your destination, you are already considering the possibilities. The steady acceleration of the car lasts for half of the journey, and as you begin to slow, it dawns on you that this will be a difficult mission. Yelov was a test pilot in the pioneering days of time travel. Not only is he more experienced than anyone else, he also possesses the cat-like reflexes of the Syrians. His skill in the sim combat booths is legendary. Behind you, the lights of the Alpolis stretch further than the eye can see, even though the monorail arcs 1,000 feet above the ground. We're very definitely in the making up words portion of science fiction here. Hovrail, sim combat booths, Syrians, Alpolis. Yeah, I mean, I don't dislike it, but it does make it quite hard work to read out loud in an odd sort of way. Less than an hour after leaving Jabanque's office, you stand before the huge plasteel hangar doors of the Eiger Vault, set deep into the side of Mount Eiger. Your ID chip is checked and you are mind-scanned before access to the vault is allowed by the service computer. As you pass the security droids, you reflect upon the folly of holding Yelov within this tight security net instead of outside it. He is 1,000,000 times more dangerous with a time machine at his disposal than if he were at large on Earth, 3033 AD. You cross the cavern which houses the time machines and the research section of time. The area in which the machines are kept is partitioned at intervals, and you head straight for your own bay. In the centre of the bay, which is lined on 3 sides with racks carrying maintenance equipment, spare parts, the Variac drive recharger and sundry other useful items, lies Falcon's wing, your time machine. You approach the hatch, and the mind scanner lights up red, then green. You are drawn up into the time machine by invisible tractor beams activated by Kane. That's your computer. Your onboard computer is called Kane, which is not at all a troubling name to give to a computer. Might as well have named it Jack the Ripper. Soon you are standing on the glowing access disc and Kane chimes, "Welcome, Falcon." The hatch seals as you settle into your crash couch and run routine system checks. The technicians have been over your machine with a microscope and the Falcon's wing is in perfect repair. You decide to ask Kane for some information. Would you like to ask for details on the planet Mechanon? I think we know what Mechanon is, we were told in the introduction. Would you like to ask for details of Yelov's escape? Not vastly relevant, they told us how he escaped. Or would you like to ask Jabanque whether he is using any other agents on this mission? I would like to do that very much. If Sparrowhawk is on this mission, it'd be good to have a heads up. Kane opens a hololink to Jabanque's office. Your new section leader is in deep thought, but looks at you as you ask your question. "I shall wait until you have decided your first move before I deploy the SAT squad. I may send Bloodhound and Lynx to Mechanon if we do not hear from you within 4 hours. But I don't believe in letting everyone loose on the timelines at once. There's no telling what might happen if 2 operatives are active within the same timeline without knowing that a colleague is busy there too." You nod. "I'm on my own then?" you ask. Jabanque smiles. "To begin with, at least. You'll survive, Falcon." You instruct Kane to break the hololink and ask it for more information. Oh, apparently we're going to get all of this information whether we want it or not. So technically we haven't made a single choice yet. Details on Yelov's escape then. Kane chooses a visual display for the answer to your question, and the console screen flashes up the following. File YV29 new data. Subject Yelov Agidi, escape from custody, security lapse in the Eiger Vault. Nature malfunction of psionic damper fitted to bionic circuitry which replaced damaged brain tissue. Result: Yelov was able to exert his power of will to control a security guard, who released him and killed 3 other guards to enable Yelov to access his time machine. Disappearance: Yelov and his time machine winked out of the Eiger Vault time hole at 0113 Standard Earth Time. Destination unknown. End of file YV29. Kane chimes. "He left a message addressed to you, Falcon. He said that he would make sure your death was a painful one." You thank Kane and tell it not to speak unless spoken to. Will you request information on Mechanon if you've not already done so, or listen to a message that Kane has just received? So I'll listen to the message that Kane's just received. Still haven't made an actual choice. Kane chimes. "I have received data on movements in 3 time holes from the monitoring section." The console screen flashes as Kane presents a list of recent time trips. Time now 03:54. There's a list. I'm not going to read out the exact list. It's long and tedious, but it sort of shows that Yelov went to Mechanon in 2291 AD. Someone unknown followed them. In fact, several people seem to have been to Mechanon in 2291 AD. And people have also been to Thrix in 1776 AD and Cressy in 1346 AD. You ask Kane who the unknown traveller could be, and it replies that all other time machines and time personnel are accounted for, and you may safely assume the traveller is Yelov. He's been a busy boy. You ask for information on Thrix and Cressy, and Kane tells you that Thrix is a planet rich in molybdenum, the rare mineral which the Variac drives and molecular converters of time machines use as fuel. It is inhabited by strange, intelligent, rock-like life forms. Cressy is in Earth's past at the time of a battle between medieval knights in armour, which was the first in the 100 Years' War. Yelov has not been idle. So where do we want to go? We can go to Cressy. We can go to Thrix, we can go for Mechanon, or we can ask for more information. I'm bored of information. I've had loads of information. I've been recording for 20 minutes. I've had all the information I can stand. So, we did loads of time travel last time. I think we should start with Mechanon because that's where he went first. So, yeah, let's go back to Mechanon. Falcon's wing rematerialises on Mechanon, which is a gleaming orb of polished metals. Robo-factories stretch as far as the eye can see, covering every inch of the planet's surface, almost without light in the sombre red sky. At 3-mile intervals around you, you see what must be planetary defence points. Bronze domes bristling with some sort of surface-to-space artillery. Your scanners indicate that nothing lives on this dead world, not even grass, but it is alive with bizarrely shaped droids which dart and scuttle across its face like insects. You decide to explore on foot and set out towards a building which glows a ghostly green. You move swiftly, but are not far enough from Falcon's wing to escape the blast of an incoming missile. You are hurled through the air and smash into the base of a huge iron cooling tower as Falcon's wing is blown to smithereens. As you regain consciousness and realise you are trapped in time on Mechanon, all goes dark. Your ancestor has been killed at the Battle of Cressy on Earth in 1346 AD. It is as if you had never existed. You have failed. Did say I would gallivant towards the very first opportunity for suicide, and indeed that has proved to be exactly the case. So, a disappointing start, you might say. I was able to make precisely one proper decision, and it led immediately to my death. And did give me a handy clue about where I should have gone instead, so that's nice, I guess. I think then we will invoke the sausagey finger bookmark rule, and we will travel back in time to Cressy to see if we can avoid our ancestor being killed in the battle. This has not been an auspicious start, I have to say. I've been playing Avenger gamebooks on this podcast for so long now, and I seem to be getting steadily worse, which is not the way that practice usually goes. You instruct Kane to turn on the Variac drive to shift you to null space and to re-engage the drive as soon as you have finished inputting the navigational coordinates for the time hole at Cressy, France, 1346 AD. Your scalp tingles slightly as the time machine moves out of phase and everything around you seems grey and insubstantial. You know that should you turn on the outside camera, the screen would remain blank. Not even blackness exists in null space. You cast your thoughts into the void and using your psychic awareness locate the time hole at Cressy. When you have translated this location into coordinates for Kane, the Variac drive engages once more. The process of re-emerging in real time is immediate but seems to take about an hour for you. You may spend time in the auto dock if you wish and gain up to 12 endurance points. When you arrive, you switch on the external camera. Suggesting we could have gone to Thrix. Your camera scans the gently rolling countryside of medieval northern France. Falcon's wing stands on a hill overlooking a gentle slope on which stands the English army. Descending the hills opposite is the French army, which seems about 5 times as large. It is mid-afternoon, but the vanguard of the French army are advancing to the attack, led by 6,000 or so mercenary troops, crossbowmen from Genoa, followed by double that number of mounted knights in full plate armour, the flower of chivalry. Their shields and banners a glorious riot of colour. Behind these, and still trooping to the battlefield, are countless peasant infantry, some armed with pikes, but many making do with scythes roped to poles. The English army numbers a little over 10,000 men, composed of knights who have dismounted and will fight on foot, brave Welsh spearmen, and a large number of longbowmen. I wonder if they'll be significant. Kane tells you that if history is unchanged, the quick fire of the English bowmen will be the weapon that wins total victory. If the French were to win the battle, Kane cannot compute a likely outcome, but Edward III, King of England, might be deposed and the 100 Years' War might never be. Neither of these sounds like bad things. France would probably grow much stronger than England or Spain. You decide to station yourself among the ranks of the English, who are divided into 3. Nearest to you are the reserves, and Kane identifies the Golden Lions and fleur-de-lis of their leader, King Edward. Before these is another body of knights, led by the young king's son, the Black Prince, who is surrounded by veteran knights, one of whom, Sir Thomas Chandos, bears a silver falcon on his red shield. So that sounds like he might be our ancestor. Away to the left lies the third body of knights, led by William de Bohun, Earl of Northampton, whose blue shield carries 3 red stars and 6 golden lions. The men of Northampton and the Black Prince are linked by a line of archers. So, I can support the Earl of Northampton, which would be sort of appropriate given that Northampton is where I live. I can support the King or the Black Prince, neither of whom I give a fig about. Or I can support the guy who may well be my ancestor, and I think that is the option that I'm going to go for. I mean, if one rich sociopath gets deposed and replaced by another rich sociopath, I'm not convinced it's going to have the biggest impact on history. Kane selects a simple coat of arms for you, a red chevron on a white background, and prepares a sword, shield and armour in the molecular converter. You glide to the ground, looking for all the world like an English man-at-arms, and an atmosphere of tense expectancy hits you. As you step away from the Falcon's wing around which the hologram of a group of trees is projected, battle is about to be joined. The Genoese crossbowmen are charging towards the Black Prince and his knights. You clank down the slope and take up a position behind Sir Thomas Chandos, sword at the ready. The Genoese halt suddenly and let loose a volley of crossbow bolts. The thud of one hitting your shield with great force shocks you as you realise you could die at any moment. I mean, technically, that is always true. Just a nice little comforting thought for you there as you're listening to this podcast. You could die at any moment. Light entertainment at its very best. A few of the English fall under the hail of flying steel, but the English longbowmen let loose a volley. The sky is blackened by a great mass of arrows, and they fall upon the Genoese in a withering cloud. The Genoese mercenaries must rewind their crossbows before they can fire again, whereas the English archers, tall, deep-chested men, can fire an arrow with deadly precision every 6 or 8 seconds. The Genoese veterans have never faced such a rain of death, and they panic and flee within moments. The French knights are so incensed at this that they ride down their own men in their frenzied charge. All nobles, they treat the Genoese mercenary soldiers with contempt. The charging knights are about to attack your position. You want to move back to the relative safety of the king's position? Remain where you are or move closer to the Black Prince? Well, I think we will remain where we are. I mean, the Black Prince, I think, doesn't die at Cressy, but he does die young. So there's no point in saving his life. Our ancestors where it's at. And hopefully the English longbowmen will mow down the flower of French chivalry, as history suggests they will, and everything will be fine. The withering volleys from the English longbowmen take their toll on the valiant French knights again and again. The French knights come on in charge after charge, each time retiring to regroup. As they wait for each attack, the English bowmen make a V sign with their fingers, indicating they are ready with more arrows. From their conversation, you gather that it is the French custom to cut off their fingers with which they draw their bowstrings, if ever they are captured. At last, some of the French knights break through, and there is fierce hand-to-hand fighting around the Black Prince's position. The Black Prince's horse is killed under him, and he and his banner disappear from sight. A French knight, whom you recognise from Kane's description of coats of arms, a strong fighter it seems, is met by a knight whose name, Sir Thomas Chandos, is called out in a warning by his squire. He is an important French noble, Louis de Navarre, Count of Flanders, whose surcoat is adorned with a rampant black lion. Your psychic awareness allows you to pick up a myriad of thoughts in the din of battle. Fear, pride, bloodlust, and somewhere a strange blank. Sir Thomas Chandos could be struck dead at any time. Will you think strike Louis de Navarre? Attack Louis de Navarre with your sword? Think strike Chandos so that he falls as if dead, or wait to see what happens next? I think I will think strike Chandos so he falls as if dead. Your blast of thought completely stuns Sir Thomas Chandos, and he slumps to the ground just as he was aiming a great blow at Count Louis de Navarre. The Count of Flanders seeks a new foe as a huge English knight dressed from head to toe in black armour, carrying a shield which bears no device, but is black as sable. I mean, sable is literally just black. Stoops as if to help Chandos. To your surprise, you can detect no thoughts at all inside the black helm, and the knight is raising a spiked mace above Sir Thomas that crackles with a blue aura. Going to try and assassinate him. So, we could try and use Power of Will. That's not going to work. We can attack him with a sword. I doubt that'll work. I'm going to just blast him. Anachronisms be damned. He started it with his power mace. Before the crackling mace can land, you whip your blaster from its place of concealment with the speed and skill of a crack combateer. Odd choice of words. Make an attack roll. So 7 to 12, 2 to 6. So I'm guessing we want the higher result here. So slightly better than 50-50. However, I have rolled Snake Eyes, which is much worse than a 50-50. You draw and aim your blaster in a flash, but the superhuman reactions of the Black Knight are even faster, and he ducks the sizzling beam of superheated plasma. The visor on his great black helm clicks open and a beam of red light lances towards you. You can only try desperately to throw yourself aside. Make an evasion roll, and we're looking for a 6 or more on this one. 8, we have made the evasion roll. That's good. You hurl yourself to the ground, the lancing red light narrowly missing your shoulder. As you pick yourself up, the Black Knight swivels and raises his mace to strike at Sir Thomas Chandos, who himself is engaged in a titanic struggle with the Duke of Alençon and another French knight. The mace crackles ominously with electricity. I thought Sir Thomas Chandos was think-struck. I thought he was lying senseless on the ground. Apparently he recovered very quickly, because this has taken presumably about 2 seconds. So we could use Power of Will to command the Duke of Alençon to attack the Black Knight. We could attack the Black Knight with a sword or use a blaster. Blaster hasn't really worked so far. Let's try getting the Duke of Alençon to attack the Black Knight, which will also free Sir Thomas Chandos for a one-on-one fight, which I assume he will have a decent chance of winning, given that he survived the battle as it was originally fought. I will say this is very exciting. You have only a moment before the Black Knight's mace crushes Sir Thomas Chandos. Desperately you focus your thoughts and project your will into the mind of a French knight, the Duke of Alençon. So we're looking for a Power of Will roll, and we want a 5 or more. And we get a 9. The Duke of Alençon comes under your control, and his sword sweeps in a great arc towards the Black Knight, even as the mace begins to fall on Sir Thomas Chandos. Alençon's sword strikes first, and the Black Knight jerks unnaturally, his mace blow shaving Chandos' armour. Sparks fly from his arm as he keels over, and his helmet visor clicks open. A beam of red light springs from the open helm, and Alençon's armour begins to boil, frying him alive. The light plays on 3 English men-at-arms who suffer the same horrible death before your blaster vaporises the robot knight. These strange happenings are too much even for the flower of English chivalry, who begin to run. The French knights scent victory, and a great roar muffled by their helmets swells from the French ranks. You have changed history, and the tide of battle is going against the English. Will you hurry to Falcon's Wing and leave Cressy? No. Or use your powers of Think Strike on some of the French knights. I think that's going to be the only option. After a slow start, this has been cracking fun. So you must make a chance roll. On a roll of a 1, 2 or a 6. One thing happens. A 3, 4 or 5. Something else happens. That's an odd way of doing it. What's wrong with 1 to 3, 4 to 6? It's just being weird for the sake of it. It makes no difference. It's a 50-50. I rolled a 2. Suddenly you find yourself back in Time headquarters, and the battlefield of Cressy is a fast-fading memory. Your actions have changed history. Count Louis de Navarre of Flanders survived the battle in which he should have been killed. His descendant is a brilliant young woman who scored even more highly than you in training at the academy. Now she is Agent Falcon, and you are working in the monitoring section, hoping that one day you will be given a chance to be a special agent. Unless the new Falcon can foil Yelov, the chance will never come. There is an incoming message on the monitoring console screen. Message sent by Agent Falcon to any monitoring operative. Please verify the following. Disturbance in Mechanon timeline. Data to follow. As Falcon, you have failed. So, 2 failures. Am I going to double sausage this one? I'm going to double sausage. Yeah, we'll assume that we got the good result of the chance roll rather than the bad one. As the French knights flow past you in pursuit of the English men-at-arms, hacking at you with their swords as they go, you concentrate your thoughts and hurl blast after blast of mental energy at them, even while catching sword blows on your shield. You topple several from the saddle. The impetus of their charge slows, and just at the right moment, 20 English knights arrive, having been ordered to the Black Prince's position by King Edward when his son and his son's banner had been thrown to the ground. The English rally, and after fierce fighting, the French are repulsed once more. You regain the safety of Falcon's Wing, suffering no more than the mockery of some camp followers who think you are fleeing the battle in fear. Kane tells you that his scanners registered the fact that the Black Knight was a droid from Mechanon, and that it must have been programmed to kill Sir Thomas Chandos, who is probably your ancestor. Be careful, Falcon. Yelov is trying to kill you. If you didn't know that electronic brains are not programmed to register emotion, Kane's tone would have you believe he was worried on your behalf. You ask Kane what effect the changes in history will have. Kane is silent for some seconds before replying, King Edward will still take Calais from the French, and most of the changes will be cancelled out by the terrible plague called the Black Death that will sweep Europe in 2 years' time. That's nice. I like the idea that individual actions affecting the timeline are less important than really big-scale social trends like a third to half of the population of Europe just dropping dead that one time. You can see on the console screen that the battle is continuing. The Black Prince is alive, another horse between his legs, and his standard has raised once more. The camera zooms in on the leader of yet another French charge. Kane tells you that the man on the visorless helmet tied to 2 other knights who are leading his horse into battle is King John the Blind of Bohemia. Once again the French charge is broken by the English archers and is thrown back. You can see the blind king lying dead on the field, still tied to his brave knights. That's a detail I did not know. Really characterful detail to include. What a nutter. It is already dusk, and the English have almost won the day. There is nothing for you to do here in medieval France. So, that could have gone a lot better, but we got there in the end. In the safety of the Falcon's Wing, you reconsider the situation. The disturbances in the timeline of the 2 planets, Thrix and Mechanon, are clearly related. As time is pressing, though it isn't, and Yelov has brought himself several hours by tying you up here in Cressy, you decide to ask for just one more item of information. One is what forces Mechanon could provide if it was saved from destruction, and the other is whether Mechanon and or Thrix have the polybdenum necessary for Yelov to make many time trips. I'm going to leave those in. I'm leaving in me completely failing to say polybdenum. Well, we've seen that he's made a whole bunch of time trips already from the information we got at the start, so that tells me fairly strongly that Mechanon and or Thrix definitely does have the polybdenum necessary for him to make lots of trips. So I guess we'll ask what forces Mechanon could provide if it was saved from destruction. Kane replies that the technology possessed by the decadent Danikoi, who programmed the self-replicating droids which turned Mechanon into one great factory, was at least as advanced as that possessed by a member of the Space Federation in 3033 AD. The fearsome array of space weapons made by those machines is the most deadly arsenal the galaxy has ever seen. The arsenal includes potent nuclear devices, floating fortress platforms, and spaceships, which are all vast robots. Mechanon itself is heavily defended by atmospheric interceptors, intruder detection satellite droids, and war droids with missile or energy weapons strongpoints. They are also able to manufacture new droids, weapons, ships for any purpose within hours. So, doesn't sound great. You realise that before you type in the coordinates for a new destination in time and space, you must have formulated a good guess as to what Yelov's plan is. Consider the 3 possibilities set below and decide which, in your opinion, knowing Yelov as you do, is the most likely. A. Agidi Yelov is using the war droids of Mechanon to build an impregnable fortress on the inhospitable planet Thrix, where he can make himself safe from the Space Federation, who might be happy to leave him there to rot. Doesn't seem very likely. I think he's a bit more power-crazed than that. B. Agidi Yelov is moving the war droids of Mechanon to the planet Thrix before they are destroyed in a nuclear catastrophe on Mechanon, where he will hide them until he is ready to attack Earth by moving them into the time hole at the Eiger Vault in 3033 AD. That seems plausible. He has been making trips to and from Mechanon. C. Agidi Yelov has already prevented the nuclear catastrophe on Mechanon and is travelling to Thrix in order to collect enough molybdenum to ship the deadly arsenal of war droids through time to attack the Federation. Is the nuclear catastrophe in 2291? Oh, maybe that's the information I should have got early doors. No, I think it must be 2291 when there is the disaster. So I think Agidi Yelov could already have prevented the nuclear catastrophe. So that would mean he's then going to Thrix to collect supplies. And he's going to have left the droids on Mechanon. So if I was able to go to Mechanon and blow it up, restoring the timeline, he would be without his forces. That's the easiest one for me to actually intervene in. But I feel as though the multiple trips that he's made between Mechanon and Thrix strongly suggests that option B is the most likely. So that is the one I am going to go for. I score an L. You explain your best guess as to what Yelov is up to, and you do not have to wait long for Kane to reply. The last disturbance registered by the monitoring beacon in the Mechanon time hole occurred after the date and time at which Mechanon historically suffered the nuclear catastrophe. The beacon should have been destroyed by now, but it is still live, according to Agent Chameleon. If we assume that Yelov has saved Mechanon, he must have a different reason for visiting the planet Thrix. So Kane thinks I'm full of guff. Fair enough. Do we want to go to the factory world of Mechanon, Eiger Vault 3033 AD, or the inhospitable world of Thrix? I feel as though we're being pushed to go to Thrix, so that is where we will go. The transition into null space and back again is smooth. Too smooth. You miss the slight jar that usually shakes the Falcon's wing as the hydraulic legs adjust to the ground above which you materialise. The camera shows a thin mist, and then you sit up and stare as a ghostly shape floats upwards past you. It looks like a series of metal girders riveted together with a crude rocket engine welded on the back. The girders are braced by metal struts atop which a large crystal or faceted boulder rests. Your stomach leaps into your throat. The crude spaceship, with its open-to-the-stars construction, is not climbing. You are falling through the dense Thrixian atmosphere, and you've just seen a Thrixian starship. Your altimeter shows 460 metres, and you are gaining speed or accelerating at 10 metres per second from a stationary position in which you were held as you emerged from null space. Try saying that 10 times fast. You have no retro rockets. The only way to stop Falcon's wing plummeting to destruction is to engage the Variac drive and throw your time machine back into null space, and then back into Thrix 1776 AD. If you can get the timing exactly right, you may be able to wink out and return only inches above the surface. When will you instruct Kane to engage the Variac drive? You can do it at 1 second intervals until you reach the surface. That will run out of energy, I'm pretty sure. And then it's 9 seconds of free fall or 21 seconds of free fall. So 460 metres. For the first second, you're travelling at 10 metres per second. So how many times do you have to go through that acceleration before you hit 460? I think it's 9 seconds. I think after 9 seconds, it'll be basically fine. I think 21 seconds is going to be far too far. You have timed your fall perfectly. Falcon's wing settles onto the rocky surface of Thrix with a crunch and a whine from its hydraulic legs. Get me doing basic arithmetic. Kane warns you that the soupy yellow atmosphere of Thrix is highly corrosive, and you put on your environment suit. While you are doing so, Kane gives you some valuable information on the planet and its inhabitants. The flying girders, which you passed in the atmosphere, were a primitive form of starship, powered by chemical rockets like those used on Earth in the 21st and 22nd centuries. The ships are slow, but the pilot, a Thrix, has a lifespan of several millennia, and being composed almost entirely of glass-like silica can exist in deep space. That is a lovely touch. I love the idea that these rocks, we don't need any oxygen, we don't really need to worry about radiation. Yeah, that's a cool alien race right there. The rock-like Thrix are telepathic and can move objects by thought alone. They are dormant at deep space temperatures, but regain the capacity for thought whenever their ship nears a sun. Less than 2,000 remain on their homeworld, and the reason for their decline is not known. Very little is known about their attitude to aliens in 3033 AD, let alone at this time. They are not members of the Federation, or they will not become members, that is. There is one other thing, Falcon. This time hole is deteriorating rapidly and will soon cease to exist. I estimate anything between 1 and 6 hours remaining before it fades away. Take care not to get trapped here. You thank Kane. The camera shows ghostly outcroppings of jagged rock swimming in soupy gases. You leave Falcon's wing without preparing a disguise. Kane does not have the relevant information stored in his memory banks in any case. I mean, what am I going to disguise myself as? A rock that walks. And you set out to explore. Before you have gone 20 metres, you see a shiny black boulder, faceted like a diamond but 3 metres tall. It is a Thrix. What do you want to do? Do you want to ignore it and walk on, run and hide in a shallow trench, or try to communicate with it? Let's try and communicate with it. I'm psychic. I hope you're psychic too. You speak into your helmet mic and a stream of clicks is synthesized by your translator. A part of the alien's mind reaches out to touch yours and you realise that it fears that you are a killer. It wants urgently to find out whether this is true. I mean, I am a killer. I have killed. But that's probably not what it wants to hear. Yeah, I've done some murders. The odd murder here or there, but it was all within the context of a mandate provided for me by the state. I hope that's comforting. So we can use the translator again and tell a harmless joke. I mean, jokes are very culturally specific, and I do risk potentially being quite offensive. I could try and control the alien using the power of will. I bet they're too strong for that. Or I can risk putting my mind into full contact with the alien using my psychic awareness. That's what we're going to go for. Find out what the rock makes of me. As you open your mind to the alien, you find yourself having to make a great effort to remain sane and regain your human sense of perspective. I mean, I get that every day, regardless of whether I'm trying to talk to a rock or not. Although I do understand how talking to a rock might make it a bit of a struggle to retain your sanity. The Thrix live for millennia on a cold and lifeless world barren of architecture. They have no need of building, or of anything else that you associate with civilization. You realise that something terrible is happening on this long, peaceful planet, and that it wants you to accompany it towards a mining complex, which is as alien to the Thrix as it is to you. The Thrix's name translates to carborundum. Suddenly it lurches and begins to roll across the rocky ground. You decide to follow it warily. Well, I think this is as good a point as any to call a halt to proceedings. Obviously, I'm not going to successfully complete the gamebook on this run, having double sausaged it. But I will continue playing on my own time. I don't want to spoil too much of it. I'm having a lovely time with it. It's a really interesting take on science fiction nonsense. I can see things I would do differently, but I always can. But there's a load of stuff in here that I really like, and it's just really exciting and really varied once it gets going. I think the things I would mostly change are the start, to be honest. It's a very slow start, and I'd much rather people get thrown directly into the action at the start, rather than a kind of big info dump. You can do your info dump in little pieces as you go along. That's just a better plan. Anyway, I'm going to play this on my own time. I'm going to go away and come back for you in just a few seconds with my closing remarks. Tatty bye. I have finished Falcon 2 Mechanon, and my feelings could not be more mixed if they came from the EU wine lake. There's a bunch of stuff that I like in this one, but there's also some really big issues that threaten to derail the whole thing. When it's good, it's very good, but when it's bad, it's like accidentally going on holiday to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. I genuinely struggled with playing through this at times, and when I finished I felt very little incentive to go back and play again looking for alternative paths. Part of that is down to the structure. For a story about time travel, this is very linear. You're given a choice of planets and time periods to visit at the start, but it isn't really a choice because you absolutely have to go to Cressy first. Choosing any alternative course of action is an instant death because your ancestor will have been killed in the Middle Ages. Once you've done that, you will need to go to the planet Trix in 1777 before finally making your way to Mechanon in 1986. On one level, I quite like this structure. You have to go through the time zones chronologically in order to ensure that the right events happen in the right sequence. Obviously, it doesn't make sense that if you travel to 1776, you suddenly die of your ancestor being killed in 1346, but this doesn't happen immediately in 3031 when your ancestor has been dead for even longer, but I'm not going to harp on about that. Time travel doesn't work. The bigger problem is that it forces you to do the same areas in the same order on every playthrough, and that feels oddly antithetical to the premise of being able to travel in both time and space. I found the writing to be basically fine, but there's a fair few sentences that read like a first draft that never got revised. There's some clunky turns of phrase in here, and the writing does lean heavily on listing futuristic tech. It's all a bit, you turn on your space television to watch the space news, while your robo-kettle boils space water for your Venusian space coffee. I get wanting to highlight all of the differences with our own time, but it's also okay if the future still has stairs and cheese sandwiches and stuff. Getting the balance on this right is hard, but I think it's easy to go overboard in much the same way that fantasy books can end up listing made-up things and places. The wretched slime bogs of Nephrim Gar beside the Balrog-infested forest of Wob have always threatened the borders of Carabil, ruled over by the wise Queen Glim, even though she can call upon the Spork Knights and the Formian wizards in times of crisis. It's the kind of writing that seems as though it's delivering a lot of information, but at the same time is strangely telling you very little. There are, however, some nice set pieces along the way. Cressy is something of a highlight. People trying to change history was a good bit in the first book, and it remains a good bit here. Essentially, you're trying to do a kind of quantum leap thing only a few years early, trying to keep things from going wrong by directly intervening to prevent them from going wrong. An evil murder bot that looks like a knight in black armour is a great bit of science fiction nonsense straight out of Doctor Who, and there's a couple of absolutely banging illustrations in this section of the book. There's lots of different options you can take, and many of them work pretty well. It feels a lot more open than some portions of the narrative. There's also a great selection of historical details as well, and I always appreciate that. I did sort of study this period at university, but I wasn't very interested in battles. I was more interested in social history and the impact of the Black Death on European culture. So the little bit with the Blind King of Bohemia at Cressy was a great bit of trivia that was new to me. Also, I was even more interested in going to the pub, and that may have been somewhat reflected in the amount of attention I paid to my lectures. This section felt really interesting and fun, and the clash with the Deathbot was nicely realised. And it's echoed by a later clash, a truly epic showdown with Ajidi Yelov in the last third of the book that really showcases how good Smith and Thomson are at doing really impactful confrontations. Okay, it's mostly random rolls, and I think it might be quite hard to get out alive just on the maths of it all, but you get to experience that climactic and cathartic fight with the mastermind behind the whole thing, and that's just lovely. It's not as good as some of the fights in Way of the Tiger, but it is at least in the same ballpark. It's followed by another really good set piece as you try and destroy the planet Mechanon to prevent it from destroying the Earth. There's a fabulous sense of escalation that leads to you contemplating completely altering the timeline in order to preserve the Earth, raising the question of whether you are actually so different from Yelov. The answer is yes, you are, because you aren't an insane, revenge-crazed killer cyborg. But being willing to make use of the weapons of the enemy does make me query whether the temptation of time travel will ultimately prove too much for all time agents. Are they all destined to start meddling for their own ends sooner or later? That's quite deep for a game book aimed at kids, and reminds me of the Star Trek Next Generation episode where Q gives Commander Riker the omnipotent powers of the Q Continuum, and it's all a test to see if humanity can resist using the power. So that's all good stuff. The bits on the planet Trix feature some truly excellent aliens in the form of the psychic rocks, but sadly the actual action that results is a bit disappointing for me. You're there to stop a mining operation, but it all feels rather brief, and I would have liked more time on Trix and markedly less time on Mechanon. It's a fascinating world, and the aliens are very cool and very alien, and I always appreciate that. Mechanon, on the other hand, until you hit that brilliant confrontation with Yelov, is kind of dull because it's all very one note. It illustrates how you can end up painting yourself into a corner with design. A planet of robots sounds awesome, and honestly, it could be really awesome if handled correctly. But for a planet of robots to land, it's all about how the characters respond to it. That mechanistic and regimented world needs people for it to have meaning. I can hear in my mind's eye Dr. McCoy raging about soulless automata and Mr. Spock archly remarking that it all seems quite restful to him and very well organised. You don't get any of that here because the demands of a gamebook push you towards constant action and not really reflecting on the action. So you're running from robots and being shot at and shooting back and all of that, and nothing about the experience really lands because it just doesn't feel like you're specifically interacting with robots a lot of the time. They could be any sort of external menace. It didn't massively improve when I went back to Mechanon later, even though I was flying my super special Starfighter. And it felt like that should work out better than it actually did, and I'm not entirely sure what the problem was. In theory, zipping around a planet in a thinly disguised X-Wing fighter ought to feel amazing, but it just came out quite flat, and until you hit that cyborg nemesis, it just feels like it's in second gear. It's all missing anything that approximates to an emotional context, and it's not written in a way that makes the robot world feel especially distinctive. Some of the design decisions do not help. The design is very simple in many ways. Now, sometimes that is fine. The core system is basic, but it does everything I want, and I've no quarrel with it whatsoever. There are no keywords or objects in this to speak of, and very few places where earlier decisions have any impact on future decisions. That's also fine in principle, but it just doesn't mesh that well with a linear storyline. I think it pushes you more towards a choose-your-own-adventure approach, where there's a whole bunch of different ways to finish the story. Here, you get a lot of different ways to die based on a single choice. There's a lot of instant deaths in Mechanon, and it makes exploring feel more like a chore than a pleasure. I constantly felt like I was being punished for not making the right choices, and an instant death is a very crude form of punishment. Hit point systems are usually a great way to mitigate this. They give you a way to hand out a few little slaps along the way without it being an instant game over, and given that you get 20 endurance points to play with here, I'm not sure why they didn't explore this more. The absence of items also plays into this feeling of being constantly punished. Items or keywords are a great way to make players feel rewarded. You can hand out items, you can take items away, and I definitely felt their absence here. It would have been great to see a few bonuses added to the various stats over the course of the adventure, especially given that there's a lot of rolling dice later on. but they're curiously unwilling to dole out any bonuses or penalties, and I'm not sure why. You've got 4 different modifiers to play with, and it seems perverse not to modify them hardly at all. Possibly they were slightly concerned about affecting the balance in later books, something that did become an issue in the later Way of the Tiger books, but there's ways around that. You can give out items that provide a temporary boost, for example, and you can just have the character in later books be stronger, even if the player hasn't completed earlier books in the series. There's also some parts of the book that just don't feel like they fully work as intended. We're told that Yelov has gone to Mechanon in 2291, but when we get through the time hole ourselves, it leads to 1986, and it's not at all clear whether this is intended or simply an oversight. I spent quite a while trying to work out what it meant before concluding that it was probably a mistake. The map of the different time holes certainly indicates that the time hole to Mechanon is in the year 1986, but the plot stresses that a key disaster in 2291 destroyed the robot factories, so it felt reasonable that we'd go back to that point to either stop the disaster or ensure that it takes place. It's a small thing on one level, but it makes the plot feel quite confusing at an absolutely key juncture. More serious are the problems with the weird minigame where you're trying to escape from some space mines in your super special space fighter. To assist with this, you get a series of grids showing locations in space. The grids make absolutely no sense. There's planets that aren't mentioned in the text, and at least one of the grids doesn't show the planet that you're supposed to be trying to get to. I genuinely have no idea what happened here, and it certainly seems like there was some kind of miscommunication at some point. It makes the grids, which are supposed to be an aid to visualising the situation, into something that actively hinders your ability to make an informed choice. With a poor choice likely leading to death, this is a baffling and frustrating oversight. All of these issues make Mechanon quite a hard book to recommend. I think it would have benefited from some more NPC encounters. They were some of the best elements of the Way of the Tiger series, the colourful cast of characters you could meet along the way. I really thought we were going to run into Sparrowhawk and have to work out whether she was properly on our side or secretly working for Yelov, but that just never happened. And that would have added some welcome variety to the planet Mechanon itself. It's frustrating because you can see that there's a really good book struggling to get out from underneath it all. The core premise and the flow of the plot is absolutely fine. It's the specific details that undermine it. Running around through time and space, trying to preserve history and destroy a robot factory should have been amazing, but never properly comes together. And it's not just the lack of NPCs. It needed more of a sense of player agency to make it feel more like a gamebook than a science fiction story with some interactive elements. There's still some good parts in here though, and it hints at some interesting possibilities for future instalments. I particularly like that there's a clever ending that lets you have that really impactful confrontation with Yelov, but also allows him to potentially come back in the next book and be a recurring villain. That's really clever. And the problems are not enough to put me off playing the final 2 books in the series, which we'll get to at some point, I'm sure. I have enough faith in Smith and Thomson that I'm willing to give anything with their name on it a spin, even if this one was maybe a little disappointing. Thanks also need to go to Stuart Lloyd for the copy of Mechanon that I played for this episode. It is much appreciated. That is all for this episode. I'll be back again in a couple of weeks with the first new fighting fantasy book of the 21st century. That is very exciting. If you want to get in touch with me, in the meantime, you can email me at hjdoomretrofun, all one word, at gmail.com, or you can follow me on Blue Sky at hjdoom. If you're enjoying this podcast, why not give it a little rating in your podcast app of choice or a review if you felt so inclined? That would hugely help me out. Don't forget, I've got my other podcast, Popular Antiquarian, where I think the most recent episode was on a mockbuster of the Marvel film Morbius, in which I go into great detail about all the ways I did not personally enjoy Morbius. So check that out. if you think that sounds like a good time. Thank you very much for listening. Take care, and I'll see you soon.